Good morning, classmates. My name is Mariana Valero, and today I will be talking about Chapter 7, which is called Stress. We have been seeing in previous chapters that this model talks about how we teach our students how to use the sounds in the sentences, in the words, in the syllables, how they can detect these kinds of sounds. On Chapter 1, we have seen about the phonetics and the phonetic system and all those things. We have seen in previous chapters about consonants, vowels, and today we're going to talk about specifically about the stress that we use in our words and in our sentences. I will first talk about what is the meaning of a stress. Sorry about the computer, my projector didn't work. Stress. What is a stress? A stress is the accent or at both sentence at the word level. It means that the importance that we give in a sentence to a word and in a word to a syllable. It means that we use certain kind of voice tone or pitch that makes the other one that we're talking to, that we're making an importance to certain things. For example, in songs and nursery rhymes, the songs uses certain word stress so the kid can understand the importance of those words. We can see in the alphabet songs, in the color songs, the stress can be manipulated for the purpose of the song structure. Um, People or we tend to stress certain words or syllables, sorry, or sentences to give new information or to remark that we need to make an understanding to the other person. We think that the other person doesn't know about what we are talking about or the importance that we want to give to certain sentences or words. That's why we make this remarkable sound or the stress on these words. Okay, now I will give you an example of how we can stress a word. Before we move on with the example, we have to keep in mind that it depends on the point of view or the perception that the other person gives to our sentence. For example, it says, John told me that he bought a new red Audi A4 in Paris last week. If we make a stress in John, I will say, John told me that he bought a new red Audi A4 in Paris last week. If I put the stress on the word John, that will give an idea to the other person of who bought the car, that it wasn't Susan, it wasn't Alex, it wasn't David, that it was John who bought it, and that I wanted to give that important information to the other person. Not the car or not the color, but who bought the car. If I say, John told me that he bought a new red Audi A4 in Paris last week. I'm giving the stress into the word he. I'm meaning that I'm giving importance to the actual fact that the person told me that he bought the car. It will say that he's lying or that his father bought it or any other information. Another example that I could use that it wasn't on the article. John told me that he bought a new red Audi A4 in Paris last week. I'm giving the importance to where the car was bought. So it depends on the kind of on intonation that you say in center words that will give the idea that you're giving stress to or the importance to that sentence or that word. So as I stated before, it depends on the perception of the other person and the interpretation that that person gives to you. Now, how we do produce stress? A simple explanation is the way that we use our voice It says by applying more pulmonic energy, that means that you give more strength to that word, or you make more muscular effort. And the stressed syllables tend to be louder, longer, and with some pitch. As I said before, on the songs, it has some pitch. It could be longer, it could be a higher tone, etc. So it depends the way you talk to the other person. That's why the perception has to do a lot of importance here because of the way that the other person reflects what you're saying. Quality. What do I mean with the quality of how do we produce stress? It's because you can use words that can have a different syllable or a curious syllable that will give the stress to the word itself. It comes an example on the article that if you say, I'm going to read, ba 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 boo ba ba, the stress will be in boo because it's a different word from the other syllables. Now, how stress affects us as the teachers of non-native speakers? It's because in the Spanish language, the stress does not rely on the vowels or different kind of syllables. Actually, the Spanish language doesn't have weak vowels or things that we can stress just by a rule. So it makes us difficult to learn English without trying to associate it with the way we talk in Spanish. I think that's why our accent is very curious and very hard not to notice. So it's something that we have to keep in mind with our students, the way that they translate, the way they make a stress in Spanish, and the way they do it in English. Okay, now moving on to the next part, we will see how the rules of stress working in the English language. We will see first that the rules in the English language to stress itself, it could be detailed and numerous. So we don't have like a list of 7 things to use when stress a word. So it could be a little bit of complicated to show all these rules to our students because they might get confused and not remember all the rules. I think that in Spanish we don't use all the rules by themselves, so in English it will be a little more difficult. But maybe we should keep them in mind to the time that when we teach the stress, so we can make our students a little bit more clear about how to use certain rules. In some languages, the stress it does not change, uh, just like I'm sorry, different from English. For example, in the Finnish language, stresses comes in the first syllable. And in Spanish, they has easy rules to remember when we stress a word. In French, the stress tends to be at the end of the words. As I said before, in English it's a little bit more complicated. We can have polysyllable words that are stressed in a different way. For example, we have words that can have the stress on the first syllable, like cannibal. We can have words that have the stress on the second syllable, like arena, on the third, like afternoon. So what does change the way that we stress a word? I'm going to be talking about 5 rules that can talk about the information that sentence gives that can give us an idea on how we can stress the words. Okay, now we're going to see 5 stress rules. The first one is called syntactic, which depends on the part that the word is in the sentence. It depends much of the information that I want to share or that I want to give importance to. For example, if I say I have a car, I'm giving the stress to the word I. which is a noun because I want to make clear that I have a car and not my sister or my father or my brother. If I change the stress to have, I have a car, meaning that I want to give importance that the fact that I do have a car. The second rule, it's called morphological, that the stress relies on suffixes such as shown and airi. So syllables that end with this kind of suffixes, the syllable previous to that ending will have the stress. For example, nation, proximity, hospitality. So the syllable before that ending will have the stress. We're going to move on to the third rule, which is compound words, which stresses the first element. It's words that mix between two words. For example, babysit. We're stressing the first syllable, which is babe. The fourth rule is called complex words, which the stress relies on prefixes and suffixes that tend to strengthen the root part of the word. So it's when we mix a prefix or a suffix with another kind of word, and we're going to stress the root of the other word that we are mixing. For example, mismanagement. The stress relies on man because it's the root of management. I hope I made myself clear. The fifth and last rule is called phonological, which depends on the nature of the final syllables of a word, often called the penult or the ult. So it depends on the way that the information is given on the words that we are saying. I think this one is more confusing because it's not actually stating which words or how do we know that we must stress in a phonological way, but it's to give us an idea. Okay, continuing with the topic about the English rules to stress, we're gonna be more specific how to stress a word. We already talked about how we stress the sentence, and now the previous rules talk about how we stress certain parts of a word. We're gonna be talking about more specifically how to stress a syllable. English words that do not have more than 3 syllables will tend to give the stress at the beginning of the word, meaning the first syllable. For example, we have the word regional, meaning that regional it's divided in 3 syllables. If we explain to the student that the English is left-based, meaning that there's a tendency to the English language to stress the first syllable, he will say regional instead of regional, like we tend to do in the Spanish language. Also, there is a rule that al is a suffix, meaning that this kind of suffix rarely stress themselves. So it gives us an idea of how we can stress a word. For example, in the word England, if we divide the word, the first syllable will be the one that will be receiving the stress. So instead of saying England, we will be saying England. As I said before, because the English is a left-based language, and because of the rules that we stated before. Now, nearly coming to the end of the chapter, we can see that stress is attracted to certain features, that the stress can rely on long syllables or deep-tongues. There are exceptions, but it will have a tendency to do that. We will see that also stress cannot rely on a syllable which contains an schwa. I don't know if that's the way you pronounce it, But we saw that on previous chapters, sorry, on chapter one, we saw that this kind of symbol refers to words that syllables that do not have a sound or do not have a special meaning into the to the word. For example, private, we don't say the e at the end. That will be meaning that private cannot have the stress on the word e because it's not even pronounced. Mature, we can see that the last sound it will be an R and not an E, and that's the meaning of that it cannot rely on the words, sorry, syllables that contain the schwa. And we also have that stress will have a tendency to rely on consonant clusters, meaning two consonants that are together. For example, on the word resurrect, we have C and T at the end, and the stress will rely on that consonant. That is what we saw in chapter 7. I think it's very interesting because it can teach you how to help the students to talk in a proper way, where to rely the stress, how to communicate the importance that they want to give to certain words or certain syllables. As a conclusion, I could say that the stress rules in English are complicated. They are not easy to remember. They are not easy to teach. Uh, and we can use some activities that are simple for the students to understand this kind of stress without actually learning all the rules. Besides, we have exceptions, and that makes the work more difficult. Um, so I think that will be it for today. I hope I made myself clear. Sorry if you heard the screaming or kids talking. It's the kids that are right now in the other classrooms. Um, I work as a homeschool teacher, so we have certain kids here. And if you have any doubt, please let me know. Have a nice day. Bye bye.